to Jacky Rom Investigates. And yes, I am Jacky Rom. And I've had the best time over the last few weeks chatting to all different people around the world, ordinary people with extraordinary lives, and just finding out all about them, and maybe they'd end up as a character in a book. I've also learned some new skills. Makeup, well, they're not new, but makeup, hair, costume, lighting, directing, editing. It's been amazing. Let's go over and see who the guest is today.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Amidst, our current situation. I don't know what your situation is over
I
in
think
your
it's
part of the world.
I think it's very similar to yours. So if you wouldn't mind, can you tell my viewers a little bit about your backstory, and then we can get kind of chat away?
Okay, my name is Sean Dustin. I am a ex-felon convict. I'm still a felon, but I'm an ex-convict. I spent time in federal and state prison. I was an addict. A number of different drugs I've been addicted to. I got out of prison. I think my childhood was pretty much single mother. My dad really wasn't in the picture. I got to see him maybe every other weekend, but not nearly enough time for a young boy to learn anything from that. Got in lots of trouble as a child. Got involved in drugs very young, and just continued that through adulthood till about my mid 30s. Got out of prison in 2006, didn't get off of drugs until 2010, and then it's been a rebuilding from 2010 to present.
So first of all, I have to say well done. That's a really big feat to come away from that story and move forward. Can you tell everybody, where are you based?
I'm
from London.
Yeah, I'm from Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area.
And have you always lived around that area?
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of the Bay Area. Until I was about 18, 19, then I went to Sacramento. From Sacramento, I went to Las Vegas. From Vegas, I went to Phoenix, Arizona. From Phoenix, Arizona, back to Vegas, and then I went to prison from there.
So let's go back. So how old were you when Dad left the house?
I think they divorced when I was 5.
Oh, so do you have any recollection of them being together?
Not really. I mean, I have bits and pieces of my dad being there, but not of them being together. I remember, he would get up in the morning and he would turn morning cartoons on for me. It's on Saturdays, and he'd make me an omelet, egg omelet every Saturday, and we'd watch cartoons together. But that's about all I remember. And any other stories that I have, of the bad stuff, you know what I mean, the abuse and stuff like that, it's nothing that I ever saw, but it was people's stories that I heard from my mom or my family that I adopted as my story. You know how we do that, right?
Of course, yeah, that's natural. And do you have any siblings?
I do. I have I had a biological brother who is now my sister, and my sister, and then a regular biological sister. So I have a trans sibling, and they're 12 and 10 years my senior.
And when your older brother that's now a sister, did you know he was unhappy in his body?
No, actually I didn't until I was like 18 or 19, and I went to live with her. And this was before, she was an actor prior to this, been an extra in some movies. And when I went to live with her, when I got out of one of the drug rehabs that I went to at 16, she had told me that it was, she was just preparing for a role in a movie. But she was dressing like a woman, like mini skirts and stuff all through the whole time I was there, like 24/7. So it was
And
it
how
was
did you take that? Did you struggle with that, or were you
I,
okay with it?
no, I did. I struggled with it. Once I realized that that was not like this was that it wasn't what it was explained to me as, I did. And I remember at one point I left from there, and we had gotten into a big fight, and I told her I was going to kill her, and all this bad stuff, just because we don't understand, all right? And it's very different being a family member of a trans individual than it is being somebody who just met a trans individual, all right? I think the big problem what they don't understand is that the the brother that I had died, basically, and I wasn't able to grieve that. And they don't understand that there has to be a grieving process, because I'm losing a relationship with somebody who I cared about, and so it's like a death. And they just expect you to move on as if, oh, but it's still me. You know what I mean? And none,
Of
but
course.
it's not. It's
And
not.
were you involved with drugs at this time as well?
No, this was right after I got out of
Right.
a emancipation house and a rehab. So I mean, I was drinking a little bit, but I hadn't jumped back into the hardcore drugs yet. And I might have smoked some weed, but my drug of choice was methamphetamine.
At
And
what age were you when you took the first whatever it was? What did you
probably,
start with? Weed?
yeah, I was probably third or fourth grade. I had gotten kicked out of the preschool that I was in, which was behind the elementary school that I had gone to. So my mom was, she was working in San Francisco at the time. So she was a single mom, professional. And so she had to, she couldn't be there. So she had to, find a situation where I could be taken care of. And I kind of screwed that up and was forced to be a latchkey kid. And so at third grade, I got kicked out of this preschool, and so I was, had to take myself to the school down the street from my house. And I had found some marijuana in her drawer because she had taken away my Walkman. And you're not there, so I'm just going to go rummage through your stuff until I can find it. And I ended up stumbling across some marijuana, and I knew exactly what to do with it. Don't ask me how. I just knew what to do with it. And I jumped on my skateboard. I took a couple hits, coughed my lungs out, jumped on my skateboard, rode straight down this steep hill. Didn't and it showed me then that drugs have the ability to make you like a superpower. You know what I mean? Like not scared.
Invincible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I did that off and on, drank a little bit throughout grade school, into junior high, and in junior high is when I really started getting in a lot of trouble.
Do you think that it's anger?
I had a lot of anger. I got bullied as a young boy in my neighborhood, so I turned around and what do people that get bullied do? They go and they bully other people because I don't have control over here, so now I'm going to try to impose some control over here on some weaker people because it's being done to me. That didn't last very long because there was some guy that kind of stopped me and checked me and kind of like in front of a bunch of people and embarrassed me, and so it was like sort of I didn't want to fight anybody, but you have this control as a bully that you use your size and fear tactics to scare people into not having to do that, right? And so once it was presented to me, and that kind of like bumped me out of that track.
So
But I
how
mean,
did you go from there to the harder drugs?
it was probably my freshman year in high school. That summer, all of my friends had started doing, well, not all of them, but a good portion of
So
them
what
started.
age were you?
I would say probably 14, 15.
Okay, that's
All right.
easier for us to understand.
Yeah, 14, 15. My friends started using crank, which is crystal now. Crank was what it used to be back in the old days, right? They were all doing this, but they wouldn't let me do it because I was the youngest. And I guess they didn't want to be responsible for turning me on to it. But I knew what they were doing because one of my friends, oh, yeah, we're doing crank. And I'm like, well, I want to do it. And he's like, well, we're not going to give it to you. And so it made me want it more. And so I knew that my aunt that lived down the street, which is my step aunt, because my dad remarried a lady that lived down the street. And she had two sisters that still lived at home there, and they were like stoners or tweakers, you want to call them. And I knew I could get it there. And she was like 10, 15 years my senior, and she gave it to me. And it was, yeah, from that, meth is a weird drug, all right? Because it has a lot of side effects to it that and chemistry and all that other stuff with your body. It doesn't always affect everybody the same way, right? And so for me, it kept me awake. There was a sexual aspect of it that a lot of people don't talk about, that it definitely impacted me sexually in some ways.
Positively or negatively?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, both. I mean, it put me in situations as I got older and involved in it that probably I wouldn't be in. On the backside of it, it had I've had great sex on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of the times when I relapsed, it would be because of the sexual part of it, not because of the drugs, because I'm trying to recreate that sexual experience, Yeah. And so, that was, and that doesn't get talked about at all, hardly. People don't, because it's shameful.
Yeah.
It's just anything that has to do with sexuality and sexual things in nature, people don't talk about because it's a shameful part of our.
That's very American. We're very European. We talk about anything. We're quite open here. We're quite happy.
Americans don't.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? We anything that has to do with sex, it's kind of a shameful thing, especially if it has to do with drugs, or if you prostituted yourself for them, or you know what I mean. We all go through bad stuff.
I was going to say, what kind of things did you do? Were you always able to afford it, or did you have to do things to afford it?
I always sold. So everything that I did, I would sell.
Right.
So I was a horrible drug dealer. let's just get that straight. You know what I mean? I didn't make a lot of money, but I supported my habit. So I had a lot of strippers that were around me at a certain point in time, right? And because that's, strip clubs are a good way to make money if you're selling drugs, especially the ones that I was. And so the only thing that kept me from really getting beat up by some of these drug dealers is the fact that they were coming around and I had all these women around me. And so not like I was like screwing all of them, but I was friends with a lot of them. And so they would come hang out, they could always party at my place or whatnot. And so if they really touched me or did anything to me, their access to all of that would go away. So I kind of skated by a lot of times.
When you were in the midst of it, did you like your life, or did you always think this isn't right?
I had a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Learning how to manipulate at a very young age. People were stones to me. You know what I mean? I didn't look at people as people. I looked at you as, what can I get from you, and how could I use you to get to the next level of where I wanted to be, right? And so that's really how I approached life. Yeah, there would be times when I would be like, God, here I am again in the same situation, but I never attributed it to like wanting to change my situation. I just go, okay, well, I better adjust how I'm doing this and maybe manipulate somebody in a different way.
When was the first time you were actually arrested for anything?
I got arrested the first time, I'm going to say, when I was about 18. I was hanging out with a bunch of people, and they beat up some guy, and they had steel toe boots on, and they beat him up pretty bad. I was the oldest one there. I didn't touch the dude. But since I was the oldest one there, I got charged with it.
And because
I just had to do some like jail time, some little bit of time, pled out to assault with a deadly weapon or something like that. And, I mean, I got in trouble when I was in high school. Same sort of deal. I got a bunch of people together to go and beat up somebody, and they did. And I didn't touch the person.
So hold on, let me go back here, because that is why would you do that? What were you after? What was your end game? Why did you send people to do this?
Okay, well, I would over the summer of my so when I was 14, before I went into high school, that summer I hooked up with this one girl that I went to junior high with, and I didn't know that she had a boyfriend. And so the boyfriend was actually a gang member. And so he had called my house and threatened me, threatened my life and all this other stuff. And he left it on the answering machine. And so I was friends with a lot of people at that time. So I took that tape to school, let my friends listen to it. And by the time we were there was 4 carloads of guys going for this, right? And I didn't have any, I didn't want to, I wasn't planning on going there to beat anybody up. I just wanted to confront the guy, but he ended up putting his hands in his pockets to go grab something. And he just, it just ensued from there. Somebody from over here hit him. He got hit, just boom, 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 ran into the convenience store. They continued to beat him up in there. He actually slit somebody across the face with that
Oh,
knife that he was going for. I never touched him, but I got in trouble for bringing everybody there.
and when was the first time you knew you were really in trouble?
The first time I knew I was really in trouble was when I got arrested and I was on the run. Well, it's when I got arrested for the first time and I had the SWAT team come in and raid my house, right, when I was living in Vegas. But they let me out 2 days later on my own recognizance. You know, I was dumbfounded, like, dude,
What did they arrest you for?
I made 5 controlled buys to an undercover cop. So I sold.
All right, you sold
Meth,
okay.
ounces of meth to an undercover
So
5 times.
It was a setup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why did they let you out? It sounds like there was a technical something.
No, I hadn't had any felonies up to that point, so there was no history on whether or not I would show up or not. Plus, they do that on purpose to get you to either they want to follow you to see where else you could lead them, or you're going to end up getting in more trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's what ended up happening. I was like, well, you know what? You let me out. I know I'm going to be facing a lot of time, so catch me if you can. And so I went on the run.
At that point, what happened?
I ended up making some mistakes and got caught maybe 5 months down the road, and I already had a warrant for my arrest because I was on the run. And that's kind of when I was like, all right, it's over. I'm gonna have to go do some time. And I caught more charges. I had bought a shotgun in an assumed identity because I was a fraud and forgery like expert, I guess you would say. I knew how to make social security cards. I knew how to make IDs. I knew how to make checks. I knew how to steal identities. And this is when I really started first learning how to do it.
Was this again to make money for drugs, or was it just a natural progression because you were surrounded by criminals, or why do you suddenly? Oh, it's the criminal aspect.
Yeah, because so before I got arrested that first time and the cops came and the SWAT team came, I was selling drugs, yes, but I was employing like intravenous drug users to go and do my dirty work for me. So I'd send them out in my truck to go do smash and grabs. They'd bring back guns, they'd bring back all kinds of stuff, and I'd get all of this, and I would just pay them in drugs, right? And so I had access to all of these different things. So I would, figure out how to do this. I mean, at the same time, I would stay up for 3 days at a time. So mind you, most people that are on meth, they have a lot of things going on, but nothing ever gets completed, right? It's busy. They look busy, but they're never getting anything done. For me, I figured out I was ADHD after, because when I would do it, I would spend 3 days at a time trying to complete something, like whether it was how to counterfeit $100 bills, whether it was how to make a check, or how to do anything. I would stay up for 3 days at a time until I crashed, get sleep for a day, wake up, go right back to work until I completed this, right? So it really worked. I mean, that's that's why people put kids on Ritalin, right? Or Ativan or whatever
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the new.
So now you're going to have to do some time. And what was it like to go in there with that kind of label? Do you have to play the part?
Well, no, not really, because in county jail or where I was at in Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas, um, I knew it was over. You know, the girl that I was with at the time, like I had a lot of stuff, right? I had cars, I had all this stuff, lost all of it. You know, that person, you know, hooked up with somebody else, so now I have no support from the outside except for my family or my mom. My dad has washed his hands of me.
And how old were you?
I was probably, I'm going to say that was 2004. I was born in 73. So 73, 83, 93, 2003.
31.
Yeah. So about 31. You know, and at that point it was like, the one thing I do remember is it was a dorm style setting. And when you know, after everybody was asleep, I remember, and I had slept for about a week because I'm getting the drugs out of my system, coming back to normal, well, as normal as I could be. I was laying in the fetal position with the covers over my head in a dorm style setting. So there were people on this side of me, people on this side of me. And I was like I was having a hard time being quiet, you know what I mean? Because of that, you know, when you have that pain that's so deep and comes from the center of your being and your core, it was like, I don't know, 30 years of pain and mistakes and you know, hurt, and all of that was trying to come out at that one moment, and I was just trying to keep it inside as hard as I could, just like convulsing, you know what I mean? Because it was crazy, man.
And do you get any psychological help when you're in prison? Really?
No, I wasn't. I didn't consider myself to have a psychological problem.
Yeah.
You know, I was like normally like functioning. I mean, I did a lot of drugs and I did a lot of damage, but it didn't affect me like it does. Like you see some of these people that are on meth, when they're done with their run, they're no longer of any use to anybody. You know?
Yeah. And how long were you in there for?
About 3 years.
So let's move 3 years on. You come out, you're clean. Are you when you come out?
Yep, I'm clean.
And then what
I'm
happens?
clean.
You're back out.
Yeah, I'm back out. I moved from Vegas. I get transferred to my mom's in the Bay Area, where I'm currently at now. And it takes me about 6 months to a year to decompress from the PTSD and everything else that I have from being in that situation. There's a lot of things that go on when you're in prison. You know, I've had to, put bodily harm on people and all this other stuff, and you're forced to kind of be segregated, so you turn into a racist of some sort. I was with the whites, so of course we don't like the blacks, and it's a whole lot of programming that you have to come out and deprogram from, right? And so that took a while in itself. I had some jobs here and there. I got married. I got into the trade that I'm in now as an apprentice.
Did you have any children?
I did. I had the one child that I let go. When I moved to Vegas with one of the strippers that I was with at the time, I had a daughter with her, but she had my rights terminated when I was,
inside.
Well, not inside. It happened before that.
Oh.
I could have contested it, but I chose not to because I wanted to take the easy way out. I knew that I wouldn't have to pay child support. I knew that, you know what I mean? I was, what kind of a father could I be?
Yeah.
I'm strung out on drugs, so I took the easy way out. I'm friends with her on Instagram now, my daughter, but I haven't really talked to her, haven't really connected with her. I mean, so I don't know. Maybe that will happen at some point.
Yeah. Have you had any other children?
Yeah, I have a 3-year-old now, and so I'm actually an amazing father to her now because of that. Has caused me to be like hyper vigilant that I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be involved. I see her like 4 times a week. Well, the next step was is I got involved with my union, right? I got a trade. I'm an apprentice now, and
What trade did you go into?
mechanical insulation.
All right.
So it's just the easiest way to explain it is if you go into a commercial building and you see the ceiling tiles,
Yep.
all the stuff that's above the ceiling tiles that needs to be insulated, like the hot water piping, chilled water piping, ductwork, that's what I do.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, in 2008, we had the big thing, right? And that put me out of work, which gave me a lot of time on my hands and free money on unemployment. I'm making the maximum amount because I make good money as an apprentice, and that's a horrible, horrible combination. I went AWOL for my marriage, just left for 3 months, went out and.
So, Sean, what was in your head? That did you have the right? Did you feel victim or the right? What made you say I'm going? Do you remember?
I wasn't done.
Right.
I literally had more things that I wanted to accomplish in the world of criminality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew that there was credit card fraud out there. There was, all this other stuff that I could get into, and I wasn't done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whoever I was married to at the time was just a means for me. I was continuing to use people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it just continued on. And at some point, yes, I figured out everything that I wanted to know. I got involved in a group of people that was doing credit card fraud, learned how to do all that, learned how to make, like, I had graduated from my little 2-bit thing that I was doing into an organization that was actually had offices and were doing that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
And so, I mean, I continued on. I did some some violations, got in trouble, and I was doing all this while I was on supervised release, federal supervised release, right? And still maintaining, but at some point, the drugs took over, and I, ended up coming face to face with the fact that like I'm having to go turn myself in for another violation. My wife at the time is like, dude, your chances are done. You know what I mean? So I'm running out of options, and I'm starting to like, my rope is like, oh, I don't have nowhere to go. You know what I mean? So I'm forced with this. Okay, so what are you gonna do? Are you gonna keep on this road, or are you gonna? Is this the bottom? Are we finally here? Because what I thought would have been my bottom before wasn't. And so it was at that point where I changed everything, and I was like, all right, I went to do this. I got clean of drugs before I went. I stopped smoking cigarettes before I went because I didn't want to be kicking all that while I was in county jail, because it's pretty dangerous, more dangerous than prisons are. And so when I got out, I just continued it.
Yeah. How long were you in there for?
90 days.
Okay.
So I did a 90-day drug rehab, which I failed out of that. That's a whole nother story. I went and did this 90-day jail sentence. And then when I got done with that, that was the last time that I had used meth.
Brilliant.
It was, what got me to that point was I was just tired of being a bad person. I didn't know how to be a good person. I didn't know how to, like, I'd gotten so ingrained in using people and living this kind of a lifestyle that I didn't know how to live any other way.
Did you do this yourself without any help? Turn your world around?
Well, I'd been to some drug rehabs and stuff before, right? I've been to 3. So from the time I was, first locked up at 14 or 13 or 14 till this point, I'd been through 18 different institutions. 3 of them happened to be drug rehabs, right? But so there was nothing that a drug rehab was going to tell me that I didn't already know.
Yeah.
The problem wasn't in the knowledge. The problem was in the behavior,
Sure.
and how do I change that behavior? And for me, it was finding things that would give me self-esteem in the opposite direction, because all the things that were giving me self-esteem up to this point was all in criminal behavior and,
Sure.
and doing things that, getting accolades for, ripping somebody off, or, which would make me feel worse about myself and force me to have to do more drugs because I didn't want to feel what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just started looking at things at the, well, what's the common denominator here? You are. I'm the common denominator. So all the problems that I had were all because of me. And instead of blaming the world and everybody else and my circumstances and my situation, and it's your fault. I'm this way
Yeah.
because of
Instead
you.
of being a victim.
Yeah. So I just learned how to be accountable for myself. And I was, I found different avenues of things to give me self-esteem. Like I was playing slow pitch softball, and it's the silliest thing in the world, right? That you would think that would give you self-esteem to pull you out of a hole, but it allowed me to get away from the people that I was with, be exposed to a different group of people, and find and like kind of find myself. I didn't like the league that I was playing in, so I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to start my own league, and I figured out how to do that. And I started my own city league, which, wow, well, if I can do that, then maybe let me try this. It was a natural progression, which normally kids get that when they're in school, they're in high school, they learn how to, they're in sports and they're doing all of this other stuff, and they're having these victories and they're getting the self-esteem, right? I didn't have that, so I had to find a way to create it for myself and learn myself into being a responsible person.
So what have you done over the last 10 years?
Well, I was a tournament director for a softball league, started my own softball league, joined my rowing team for my union, got really involved in that, became a sergeant at arms. Then I got elected to the e-board, executive board, and trustee. Did that for a couple of years, along with, still maintaining all of these things, right? Had a daughter.
Do you still have the feelings of taking drugs, or is that? Oh, fantastic.
No, I mean, so I'm not going to say that I'm drug free because I take edibles. So when I got out, right, I stopped using meth, but then I ended up with a 7-year opiate addiction. But the opiate addiction.
You don't use the same words here. I think you mean, are they painkillers?
Yeah, painkillers.
Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
So I got hooked on painkillers for 7 years, where I was actually spending $500 extra a month on a prescription because I was, constantly taking them. But I could function. So I could still hold a job, I could still maintain what I was doing, right? But I always had this monkey on my back, right? And so it wasn't until like maybe I would say 6 months before I started this podcast, a little over a year ago, that I stopped. And the only reason that I stopped it, and I did it myself, right? A lot of the stuff that I quit, I do it on my own. I don't.
Hold on, before you go on, can you tell people what you're doing? Because obviously my viewers don't know about your podcast. So how long ago did you start the podcast?
I started it about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and it's called Nowhere to Go But Up. And that's just because that's where I came from. I found myself in a situation where I had nowhere to go but up, nothing else to lose, tired, disgusted, didn't like the person that was looking back at me in the mirror anymore, and I decided to change it. And so
I'm guessing that your podcast is very inspiring.
I listen to all my episodes, just because I have to, because I'm editing them. But I mean, if I had to, I've gained a lot of traction since this Corona thing, because, I when I first started it, I wasn't able to be as consistent as I wanted to be. And with any of these social media type things that we're doing, consistency is the only thing that's going to keep people coming back. And so I've had to learn that kind of the hard way. And so I've been able to do that now. But yeah, I've got 37 episodes now, and it's really based on people that are at the same, have nowhere to go but up, from people that have been in rape survivors to, PTSD, eating disorders, to coaches that talk about different things. So it's bottoms, life struggles, and how people get through them. And in between that is like, if I'm struggling with something and I need to talk to a coach, I'll interview them and I'll start asking them questions that I'm struggling with.
After hearing your story, you can hear all the energy. So I can feel how all the energy was put one way. Now you've taken all that energy and focused it the right way.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mom used to always tell me, she was like, if you spent half as much time trying to, get out of doing the right things, because it really started with me just being lazy, right? I would try to find ways around doing what I was supposed to do because I didn't want to do them. I wanted to go play. I wanted to go do this. I didn't have structure. I didn't have discipline. So I figured out kind of my own way of what worked. And it was always how to get around things. And so that just carried on into adulthood. And I figured out how to get around having a job, how to get around having to do this. And so.
Did you stay in the insulation business? Did you stay in the same business?
Yeah, I'm still in it. I'm laid off right now, or I'm on disability right now. And I was working all the way up until we got put on lockdown.
And the lockdown, how has this been for you? Are you finding this really frustrating, or are you focusing on really good?
No, I mean, I've spent time in prison, so this isolation to me is nothing new. To me, I think I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me. Plus, I'm doing 16 interviews a week.
Fantastic.
Right? And so I'm getting socialization.
Yeah.
I'm saving money because I'm not out spending it.
So what is the future for Sean? What do you see? Do you see a path?
I do. Actually, I do. There's going to be a book in it. There's, my life has 3 sections to it. My story. So, I mean, it's 3 different books that can be published from it into a network. I plan on building a network of I interview quite a few people. I know, personally what each of them holds. So, I'm going to build a network of coaches and other individuals that you can access. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff. The book is obviously going to spawn a lot of, speaking opportunities, which is really where I want to be, is in front of people speaking and telling my story and helping other people.
As you're telling the story, it made me think that, young teenagers need to hear you. I really hope that they get to hear your story because it is inspiring.
Well, thank you. I don't, if anybody out there listens to my podcast or goes and checks it out, you'll find that I don't hold anything back. I'm very transparent. I talk about everything, even the embarrassing things, even, the things that, when we were kids. Here's a good example. And you experiment with other kids. You know what I mean? I had thoughts of, maybe am I gay? Because I had experimented with other little boys, but that's normal.
Yeah.
It just happens, you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know if people understand that, you're running around with this guilt of something that you did when you were a kid. Don't know if you're a homosexual or if you have, homosexual tendencies and it's like, no, man, I mean.
But talking, it's so important. Honesty, talking is just, very, very important. Anyway, on that note, I want to thank you so much for sharing. I've really enjoyed listening to your story. And as I said before, I think to me, it's inspiring. And I wish you lots of luck. And I'm sure you'll be out there inspiring others. You'll be out there doing your public speaking. I can feel it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, it's just one step, one foot in front of the other. Keep going. That's all we can do. And,
Exactly.
we're all trying to be better people at the end of the day. And if we approach life from that place, I think that, maybe humanity still has a chance.
And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank
All
you,
right.
Sean. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.